Welcome to the Conversation for the Curious Mind. Conversation for the Curious Mind is a production of In Search Innovation. My name is Ryan. I'm joined today, as always, by my good buddy, Dr. Eddie Pierre. And today, Miss Colleen Jones has decided to step into the studio with us and have a little bit of fun. What we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about the psychological and pace and pressure of a conversation on a professional level. Colleen, what do you do for a living? What I don't want to say for a living. What has been your professional pathways thus far in life?
I spent a lot of time in customer service, and now I'm a leader in the service industry for claims, warranty claims.
Very nice. So you deal with people that are angry and sometimes frustrated.
They are, yes.
And you train people also how to deal with people who are angry and sometimes frustrated.
I do. Yes.
Don't we
30 years, actually.
So what made you stick in that field? What was the passion? To stay in something for 30 years, there has to be.
It's about actually helping people. Really and truly, not only just the employees that, I was part of a new business, and I was the first employee. So I watched the business grow and helped make it grow, and we were able to provide jobs in the community. And then in addition to that, it's actually getting people back on their road with their cars when they're broken down. So, you don't realize how important a vehicle is to, the family, the individuals, to get to work, to get to doctor's appointments, to get to, just everything. So, I don't know. It's
me being cynical. My mind went straight to the guy whose claim didn't get approved at 100% and he got to pay for his stuff, who's angry. I didn't even think about the people that you guys help with that.
We help a lot of people, but
they need their vehicle, and
those people, the angry people, I found them invigorating and challenging. I was never annoyed because I wanted to figure out how I could turn them around also.
And what are some of the ways that you would go about that?
It would just communication, calm. If they got spoke louder, I spoke softer. I went opposite. So the louder they went, the softer my voice would go, and slower and more methodical.
Huh. So, Eddie, what would you say the psychology behind something like that would be? If someone's yelling at you, are aggressive towards you, you get softer and kinder. And sir, I really hope that we can help you. Versus, dude, I don't know what to tell you, man. You can yell all you want. It ain't gonna get you nowhere. Eddie, are you with us?
Oh yes, I'm listening.
Yeah. No, I asked you, what's the psychology behind speaking softly when someone is aggressive?
Well,
and being kind when they're rude. Sorry.
Well, it all depends. Primarily, we will not identify the element of kindness. I don't think psychologically the person who was remaining calm, not necessarily being kind, and those type of interaction, it all depends on what you call the precursor. In other words, if you train and your responsibility for the organization is to deal with those difficult people, so what you're doing, you're suppressing your emotion and you're being passive because you know very well that that's a job you're doing. You're not necessarily using a psychological method to.
Well, what's the to psychoanalyze it? What's the benefit of doing that versus going back at them aggressively?
Well,
instead of matching their energy, you polarize their energy. Is that a good way to word that, Colleen?
Typically, what I would see. Let me just jump in here real quick. So, if we had an aggressive customer or irritated, irate. I just want to make sure I'm using the correct word.
Dissatisfied.
Typically, what would happen is they would yell and talk very loud, use harsh language, talk fast, different things like that. And what I would take notice to is my team that would work for me would mirror that individual, right? So the louder
Yeah.
that they would get,
Yeah.
the louder my team member would get, right? And you would just have two people and their voices escalated, right? And I did a social experiment and I said, let me try it this way. So as they got louder, my voice went down to the point that they had to pay attention to hear me, right? So they had to really pay their what's I'm trying to think of the octave, or I'm not quite sure. I'm not saying the word octave.
The octave
is so
yes.
loud, and that's
My
where
dad was
their
a voice
headspace
coach.
is at that time. So then they have to try and like decompress a little bit so they can actually hear what I'm saying, because I'm talking so softly, and I'm using a lot of breath when I'm talking. So I've taken it down so much. So they're screaming.
In what way would you use breath? You said you use a lot of breath.
Well, typically when I'm in my natural voice, I have a lot of throat. I talk in my throat. But when I'm really conscientious of how I'm talking, I use a little bit more breath in my voice and I push the air through
Oh,
and
I
I
get
make
it
it
now.
a little calmer. So I'm trying to create a different atmosphere for that customer, because nothing is going to get accomplished while that person is in an irritated and irate state. There's nothing that's effectively going to happen. My goal at that point is to get that person in a state of mind that we can have an adult conversation, not a critical parent conversation, not a child conversation, but we want factual adult conversation. So I need to change the atmosphere and the mood to try and get them there, and then we can get to an adult state.
How often did that work?
90% of the time, 95% of the time. It wasn't just those techniques. There were other techniques that I used, but.
Yeah, but you could take, instead of matching energy, you polarize the energy in the conversation, and you could actually have them match you instead of things going the other way around, where you're matching them and then they, because it becomes an escalation.
Right. There's other things I would use.
You know, it starts off with, "Are you serious, dude?" And it's like, "Yeah, man." And then the octave continues to rise.
Or I'll say things.
I was told,
I'll say things like, "This is very important, what you're telling me. I'm going to write this down. Let me grab a pencil." So you grab a pencil.
You had a pen in your hand. Yeah.
And I'd say, okay, instead of telling someone slow down or calm down, I would say things.
You would make them.
I would say things like, "Let me capture all this. Okay, go ahead." Right. And then I'll let them know that I'm writing. And then I'll say, "Can we pause for just a moment so I can read this back to you? So I've captured everything you've just said." And I'm trying to slow the conversation down, and also so I'm able to let them know that I'm hearing what they're saying. I've given them my attention, right? And I'm making sure I'm validating everything that they're telling me, right? So I feel like that is a sign of respect for that person, because they may have a legitimate issue. I don't know, but until I can get past all the noise and really...
There that word is again, Eddie.
So I could get past all the noise and find the root of the problem. So I'm trying to get them into a state of mind that we can actually get to the root of the problem.
Before we get too far, my reference would be what I was saying, that if I hire you as let's say from HR, and your responsibility is to deal with customers, you already have a predisposition that you're going to be dealing with a lot of customers. When a customer is not satisfied with a service and they come into your office, you already have a predisposition of them, that they irritate, they agitate, they upset, they need answer. And so if your job, if your responsibility through the organization is to deal with those with customer period, except every now and then you wish all your customers well understandable and calm and express what's going on, and you sit them down and you listen to their concern and you take notes and then you address them. But every so often you'll get a customer who's agitated, loud, and irritated. And so what you do, since that's your job, you already know you're going to come across those customers. What you're doing is you pretty much become very passive by repressing your emotion, and you actually manipulating the customers by make them give them the impression that you'll pay attention. But see, you're doing a job because you're not a psychologist. You're not psychoanalyzing the client to see, okay, what's going on in their life. So what you're doing, you repress your emotion. You have to, because if you respond to the customer the way they're screaming, most likely your boss probably gonna say, okay, well, he was screaming, you were screaming. So you have to repress your emotion, really suppress your emotion, and right in there, give the customer the impression that you are listening to them. But bear in mind, your left brain is telling you that's your job. Okay, and you can rest assured the next customer you hope is a little bit more calmer. These are the day when you leave your office, you're like, phew, every customer I talk to today, I want to chop my head off. And I made it to the day because I become used to those yelling and screaming. And I know if I sit down calm and cool, the customer, but so you're not using psychology because you're not a psychologist. You don't have a predisposition how to redirect the client, but you do know if you repress your emotion, meaning you know the person is screaming, but you know you should not scream back at them because that's not going to accomplish anything. You already know that.
Yes.
Okay.
I would argue, though, Eddie, that in professional and personal settings, most people use psychology whether they realize it or not. I mean, just to give an example, offbeat example, in dating, if you gaslight someone, you're using, and do you guys understand what gaslighting is? You feed them full, you pump them full of feel good, and then you kind of pull back. And then you make them want it, and then you pump them full of feel good again. That's a form of you're using psychology, even if you're not a psychologist. A lot of psychopaths, Jeffrey Dahmer, for example, he used psychology without even, it was a con almost, like he used the psychology of people, the trust in people. He would dress very, unassuming and go to places that he would be unassuming or a non-threat, and then take them back, chop them up, beat their body. But
well,
yeah, I would
my focus is on Colleen, not the customer. Yes, we all use psychology.
No. I'm saying Colleen herself is using psychology.
Correct. That's what I
like
mean.
the whole ethos of it's a psychological battle.
Well, yeah,
because I want you to yell and cuss me out so I can get to your boss, and now I'm going to get perks. That's the whole purpose of the person yelling.
Yeah, when I say
I'm yelling so I'm right.
When I say she's suppressing her emotion, that is a form of psychology. She has to,
yes,
because if the customer's yelling and I'm yelling, we're not going to accomplish anything. So the concept of suppressing, in other words, you can use a different term for suppressing emotion. Maintain calm. Okay, be calm. And you can rest assured, if I do this job for a long time, I already know. First of all, before you go see the customer, you probably have an idea. There's a guy out there who's yelling and screaming. He's upset. He's irritated. He's dissatisfied. When you get into the meeting, you already know how to approach the meeting. But yeah, definitely, you're using psychology. But what I was referring to, you don't go there with a psychological predisposition to psychologize the client. You're doing your job, and after a while, you already know this is part of the job. I'm not gonna have everybody that come there and nice and neat and calm and respectful. I'm gonna have those hard-headed people who come yelling, screaming because they're dissatisfied. I have to have a method to which I communicate with them, because if I'm a psychologist, you can rest assured. For me, I would say, okay, you're probably going to go home, and when you come down and come back, that's not that. But that's not going to work.
Yeah, that's not the way it works. Have you ever worked in sales, like when you were going through college, and as a young man, did you ever do any type of sales or?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. When I first came to this country, when I left Canada to come to this country, first I was selling books. I was selling the day before we had the internet, I was selling a dictionary. And I can tell you, when I come into your home, I would use every method to get people to buy a dictionary. Later, when I left that, I used to sell vacuum. We have
Oh, I sold vacuums
yeah.
too, door to door.
I'm in your house.
Did yours? We're not going to name a brand because they didn't sponsor us yet. Did yours have water instead of an air filter?
No, that's the bag, the one with the bag. I didn't have not those outfits. We're talking about way back
Yeah,
then.
remember how old?
K and
Remember how old we are, Ryan?
Start with a K and with a Y.
So when I come into your home, go ahead.
Did it start with a K and end with a Y?
Why? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
Okay, I know the vacuum.
Yeah.
I'm very versed in vacuums. I was a door-to-door salesman of a water filtration vacuum about 12 years ago. I ended up being the top salesman in the region, and I was supposed to go to Las Vegas for this big convention, and I quit and went and opened up a landscaping company.
I tell people that all
The
the
whole
time.
purpose of me doing it, I wanted to learn how to sell.
I tell people that
And
all the time. Once upon a time, car insurance was not a big deal. You could have drive without insurance. I used to sell
Yeah, it
car
wasn't the law.
insurance. I knock on the door and then convince you why you need car insurance. People say, "Well,
That is cool.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, it wasn't a big deal."
We're
Okay,
all learning about each other. I had no clue that Eddie sold car insurance dictionaries, and
and I have a copy of it.
I know the vacuum,
Yeah,
man. They're heavy.
I know.
The heavy bastard. I used to take vacuums as trade-in because I didn't want you to use what you had. I wanted you to use mine. So if I take yours as a trade-in, now you have to use mine, otherwise you can't vacuum.
Mhm.
And then your friends are going to come over and see it, and hopefully you slip them my card, and then I could sell them my vacuum too. And this was an expensive vacuum. I'm talking like in the upwards of $2,000. I was trying to sell these vacuums.
Well, you had to be
At the
good at
time,
it. I used to sell.
oh my
Yes.
God. I used to park my car around the corner because I had this little red POS Ford Escort. And I didn't want, I'm selling to people who drive BMWs and I'm wearing a suit and a tie. I don't want them to see my car. So I would huck these things down the road for like half a block so they wouldn't see what I
I
pulled
had
up
one
with.
of those.
And man, were they heavy, buddy. I know you know what I'm
I
talking
had one
about. They
of
were
those.
heavy.
Yes, I had one.
And I have my little case. Get up there.
I had an old Oldsmobile. This car, it was something. I don't know when it's gonna start, when it's so. I used to park it
Yeah.
away from people home because I'm on the
Yeah.
hood, removing
Yeah.
the carburetor.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to go in people home with all dressed up in
Man,
tie
I know the
and
feeling.
then convince them I have all this together, and I'm out there, and the back would get the car would look, It would.
Mine was a 5-speed, and I would always park it on the hill because sometimes I would forget to turn off my radio.
Uh,
Like I would have
yeah.
to physically push the button to turn it off because it was aftermarket, and I'd be in doing a sale, come out, my battery would be
It's
dead.
gone. That's
So I made it a habit. It was a manual, so I made it a habit to park it on a slight incline, so I could just have to push it just a little bit, and I could jump in, pop the
Bumping.
clutch.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah, me. I remember one other thing I had to do. I used to drive with a hose, so I put it in the gas tank, put some gas in a little bottle, put in the radiator.
In the carburetor, yeah, in the carburetor to get it to fire. Oh my God, you're a hillbilly. Oh,
My
yeah.
bottle
We did.
in a cable, put it in the tank.
Wow, that's amazing.
Remind me to
That is
never to
amazing.
sell either one of you a warranty for your car. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, don't. I trash cars. It's what I do. I'm hard on.
So I know. Well,
Oh, wow.
unlike what Colin is doing is very professional. It's all setting. He's talking about
Yeah,
an office, and she's a professional, and people come to see her. But when you go into someone's home trying to convince them to buy something, some of them are very
I've done.
polite. They will tell you, "Come on in, say, would you like something to drink?"
Yeah,
So, yeah.
I've done volume cold calling as well for a collection agency.
Mhm.
That is, no one's ever nice to you when you're calling them, telling them that they owe you money and they have to pay. I get hung up on, and it was a thing where you would have a volume of calls. You need to have 360 dials before lunch and then another 200, whatever, after lunch, unless if you had this much talk time with this much recovery and da-da-da-da-da. They had like a whole system set up for how you had to operate. I hated it. I was like, this is not sales. Like I applied for a sales job out of I think it was getting jobs out of the merchandiser then, but it was horrible. Like it was just like a horrible ethos for me, but I learned how to cold call. Like I can pick up the phone, I can call anybody and I'm comfortable doing it.
Mhm.
So, Colleen, your position, is it related to HR?
I am
Is
not
it a
in
branch of
HR, but I have done. I part of my position requires me to do some HR related work.
HR related? Now, do you train the HR personnel then for internal work, or do they train you directly to deal with customers?
The HR people don't train me to deal with customers, and I don't. It's not. I'm managing people, so that's my correlation with HR.
Primarily customers.
Primarily customers, and I have two.
And
I have two sets of customers. I have the actual contract holders, and I
Mhm.
also have our dealers. So I have the business to business
your
customer.
distributors.
I have a business to business customer that I have to keep happy, and also the end user.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with what you're saying in terms of going into those conversations with the right attitude, because many, many, many years ago, I would have one of my agents say to me, "You need to talk to this person. They're extremely upset," and they would paint a picture for me of this horrific person on the other end of the phone, because I'm not face to face. I'm on the phone. Okay.
Mhm.
And I would go into that with anxiety, right? And I
Yep.
would go into that
Yep.
with in mental preparation of this person who's just awful, right? Because that's how
Mhm.
it was described to me. And I got to a point that I said, "Stop. Tell me the problem." Or,
Mhm.
even
Not the
sometime it
person.
was
Yeah.
just give me the number, give me a vendor number or something to look it up, and I'll deal with it, because I wanted to go in fresh, right? I didn't want to have any preconceived anything,
It's very important.
right? Exactly. And then getting into the call, my focus was, how can I make this person's life better? What
Mhm.
can I do to make this person have a better experience, right?
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
had a goal in mind. I wanted to help this person. And it wasn't about, I need to argue the point. I
Yeah.
wasn't
Yeah.
going in there to say, they're going to say something and I'm going to argue back.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
I wanted to find the most creative way I could help this person, even if it's the tiniest bit. So I was able to come up with some creative things, by the way, too.
And I think I would imagine, even though, correct me if I'm wrong, I think, which I have done some of that in some cases, even let the person express, let him let it out, just
Let,
listening to them.
let it all out. And don't say anything.
Don't say anything. Let him let it out.
Power of the
That's
pause.
right.
Just let it out. Let it go,
Because
or
sometimes, there are times where I'm the customer. And one of the
Mm.
things I appreciate is someone who will listen to me for 30 seconds. Just listen to what I have to say. You don't have to agree with what I'm saying, but at least listen to it and say, okay, I'm going to put you on hold, sir, and find out, whatever. Do you mind if I put you on hold? And I said, no, go ahead. But the fact that you take few seconds to listen to me, let me know that, well, you probably, when you're done the conversation, you probably didn't help me at all, because you probably say, listen, the person I need to contact, they left for the day. I
Mhm.
promise you I'm going to make a note. But just the fact that you're listening to the person means a lot to them. And that's very important, to let them let it out. So I would
Mhm.
imagine you have those experiences where you have to just listen.
That's key. Listening is key, and listen to understand. So that's one of the things I teach. It's not
Hmm.
just listening, it's listening to understand the other person. And then I have my team reiterate what they're saying. So,
I'm going to ask you to define that for me.
but
Define listen to
people can
understand.
listen, and you'll make a statement, and you're kind of listening to the words, but are you deeply listening? Are you truly understanding what that person's saying? Oftentimes we would have a person call us and they would talk about I don't know, I'm making something up. They went to a shop and the guy's name was Joe and Joe said this and then they didn't and then this
Mansplaining.
and the next thing you know, they want an extra day of rental. But you hear this long dissertation about Joe at the shop and Bob and you're thinking the whole time the problem is with something that's happening
with Harry or John or the shop or
and you're like, and you get to the end of the story and I'm like, do you want an extra day of rental? And they're like, sorry. And I just have to chuckle. But sometimes, like to Eddie's point, they want you to listen because it is frustrating. And again, let's go back to this. I'm not laughing at them. This is your car. And some people only have one form of transportation.
Exactly.
It's a domino.
And that's something to definitely take into consideration when, and even if you do have two forms of communication, you may have, two forms. My mind is so on communicating because of the podcast. Sorry.
No.
But if you have multiple modes of transportation, that car may be the car that your wife uses to go to work. And now you have to carpool and your wife has to drive your truck and she can't park the thing. So now it just became this whole thing. Even though I have two cars, now I'm not only worried about the car that's in the shop and am I going to get my warranty filled? I'm also worried about, is my truck going to be in the shop because my wife is not capable to drive it, you know?
I mean,
or I'm not capable to drive her minivan because I'm used to driving my truck, you know, or whatever it is. You're taking me out of my comfort zone and putting me into an uncomfortable situation, and I want it remedies as fast as possible so my life can get back to the way it was.
So I teach my team, what is their pain, right? Their pain is that they are out of vehicle, or their pain is that they don't have any money, or they don't have empathy for the individuals that are going through this situation. Care about them, care about the situation. Now, you need to, when you're in that position as a service representative, you do have to be careful that you don't get too emotionally involved because it can be draining, right? You have to have some walls up. But in the same regard, you definitely need to care about the person. You should care about it because it helps you listen more, listen to understand, and be creative about, getting to some better solutions.
So I did ask you to define something. Do you remember what that was?
Listen to understand.
Yeah. Now, when I asked you to do that, I feel like a lot of people listen to respond.
Yes.
Eddie and I had talked about this in one of our previous podcasts, where instead of listening, taking a moment, digesting, and then responding, I'm just waiting for a pause so I can say my part. That's some of the worst conversations to have with people, because not only do you feel unappreciated, you feel invalid as well. Like you don't even care what I say. It doesn't matter. I could sit here and I could say strawberry shortcake and popcorn bubblegum. And as soon as now you're talking. And those are some of the people that it's hard to gain value out of the conversation. I like to think that I can learn something from everyone. Some people are a lot harder to learn from than others. Some people are a lot harder to talk to than others, and what's a way that we can better talk with the intent of listening or conversate with the intent of listening instead of conversate with the intent to talk, in your opinion?
My opinion, I think it.
Sure. You first, then Eddie.
My opinion is I have to make a choice. I'm choosing. I'm in a conversation. I'm going to put all my distractions aside. I come in there with that attitude that I want to do this, right? And then it's focused. I need to make sure that I have the focus on that person, and I'm giving them all my attention. But it is something.
And we're just talking in day-to-day conversation, not just in sales.
It doesn't matter what conversation you're having.
It doesn't.
It's something that I say all the time. If you're going to do something, do it with love. do it with love. Like if you're going to have a conversation with somebody you care about, if they say something to you, pay attention to what they're saying to you. But we have so much noise around us and so many conversations. And
how many times has this happened?
It's right. And I do it. Okay. I'm guilty of it.
What was that?
Guilty of it myself, right? Yeah. So I think I have to constantly remind myself, are you listening to understand? Are you giving those individuals or that person your full attention? It has to be a conscious choice for me. I can get distracted very easily.
Of course. I think we all can, especially in the postmodern era. There's so many things that are very, I'm going to say it, noisy. But Eddie, from the psychological perspective, what is the power of the pause in conversation? One thing that Eddie does better than anyone else that I've ever talked to is when you ask Eddie a question that he doesn't have the snap answer for, you get a pause and a look of, it's not wheels turning, it's got to take that file and grab this file and no, I don't like that one. We're going to do it like this. And then you get an answer from Eddie. It's a beautiful thing. I mean, and I value it, and I try
He's opening drawers.
It's like the Dewey Decimal System in his brain's going on. It's like, yep, boop, 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 boop. And he's one of those little crafty librarians. It's like, this is where your book is.
He does actually a much better job of listening than we do because he's very, very conscientious of even the words or the sentence structure to make sure he understands completely what we're asking. Yes. Which I can appreciate.
Yeah, more so than we do sometimes. the scary part. Yeah. Yeah, and the next thing you know, you're talking about the fourth dimension and how we're going to travel there tomorrow morning. And I'm like, shit, okay.
The zombie apocalypse, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, he is a day walker, so. Yeah. Anyone who hasn't seen Blade, please watch it. It's a documentary on Eddie's early life. I don't know how you got Denzel to play you, but bravo, brother, bravo. No one could have done it better, huh?
Although I must say that we need both the neurological as well as the psychological component in order to combine it. And what we're doing, we are involving the central nervous system as well as the brain. And what that means is, from a neurological perspective, we are wired to respond to anything that we're facing. And so therefore, what that means is it takes training and teaching to learn to listen. So it's not that people, is that all of us. Our synapses in the brain communicating with the central nervous system. When someone is speaking to me, I need to respond. So it takes training to shut off the central nervous system, because remember, one other thing I share with you, and let me remind you of that, Ryan, and you will see as we go along how you're going to use those biological and neurological tools in our communication with the world. We have a central nervous system that perceives the external world. In other words, it perceives the external world, formulate a plan of action, response, and give to me before I talk to you. So when I'm talking to you, my central nervous system is very active, trying to get me to respond to you. It takes training to calm the central nervous system, quiet the right hemisphere of the brain, and allow the left hemisphere to listen to you, analyze, calculate, pay attention to the words you're using. And so that there's lots of activity going on when we interact with people. And that's one way, that's the concept of neurological and biological. And then we have to go to a specific. Men and women listen different. You can see if a man and a woman goes to the office, they're dissatisfied, the wife probably is sitting there hoping he stop yelling.
Or the husband sometimes. I've been with some very loud, boisterous women.
That's right.
And then they'll say stuff like, my boyfriend will, and I'm like, your boyfriend ain't doing shit. You leave me out of your little craziness over there. Your boyfriend's an audience member only right now. But
Well,
yeah,
from a biological standpoint, the women always speak from an emotion, men speak from the mind. Okay, a man will tell you what in his mind, whether you like it or not.
in the frontal
That,
lobe.
that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, where the
Yeah.
woman
Where women more think from
from
the rear
emotion,
cortex
from the
with
cerebral
emotion
cortex,
attached to
she's
the.
explaining to you whatever it is doing to her, so you can understand. So therefore, it's very important for us to listening. It's an art. We need to learn the art of listening, and to
Ooh.
learn the art of listening, you really need to understand all this compartment I just mentioned: central nervous system, left brain, right brain reaction, the gut response. All that involved in a very brief conversation you have to someone. And so when someone say, "Oh my God, you're a good listener," the person have no idea how much work you put into settle down those different compartment of your central nervous system, right brain activation, and allow the left brain to do the work. And that's so it's not we are wires both neurologically and biologically to give a response. Sometimes if you have a very active right brain, you think the person need a response from you. Yeah, they need a response, but you need to listen so you can give the proper response, and that
Mhm.
require some very, very discipline and learning the art of listening.
Well, can you describe what you mean by training? Is it personal training? Is it meditation? When you're saying to shut,
Or is it just reps? Is it like going into the gym? I have to train my arms. The only way they're going to
like
get bigger is if I'm
how
doing
do
it.
you train to shut down your nervous system?
Well, that's a very good question. Number one, we need to know what is the central nervous system, and
Okay.
we don't shut it down, we quiet it down. It's very loud, it's a matter of fact, because it's very active. And as I just described, uh, in quantum physics, quantum theory, as well as neurobiology, we discover all the scientific evolutionary concepts to where we are today. We also have the concept of neuroplasticity. Our central nervous system is very active. It's almost like the Marine. They go ahead and prepare the way. That's right. Okay,
Mhm.
that's right.
Door kickers,
Okay,
ass kickers too.
that's right. Your central nervous system is like the Marine. Okay, he goes there. He's the one that build the bridge. He's the one that put the things together, prepare the route. Okay, and then so that's what it's doing. So what we need to know is learn the application of the central nervous system and settle it down. We need what it's doing, but we need to settle it down. So you take time to know what is the central nervous system. The central nervous system, it's just one of the function of the body. It's very, very, very complex. It's interconnected with the brain. It's sending signal message to the brain. So how do you do that? First, you need to learn your emotion. The first thing we need to know when someone is talking to you, do not take what the person said personal.
Mhm.
Yes. I preach that all the
Okay?
time, especially to my
Mhm.
nephews when they come in all upset. I'm like, dude, listen,
Okay?
you're going about it all wrong. Everything's business.
Exactly. Do not take it personal. And to avoid you from taking it personal, you have to do a quick, as Ryan mentioned earlier, using quick psychological interplay to realize, okay, the two things will happen. A, either this person is talking to me or is it talking at me?
Mhm.
Once you decide which one of those will do a lot at your response. Is it someone who's speaking with me? Is it speaking at me? Okay, which one of those? And the words the person use will help you determine is it speaking with you or is it speaking at you. Listen to the words. If it's come to your company, okay, he put you and the company in the same place.
Mhm. Mhm.
See, this person is speaking
Even if you're just the clerk.
exactly. This person is
Yeah, I
speaking
don't
at
own
you.
McDonald's, bro.
Okay.
I make
Mhm.
$9 an hour to
Okay.
flip your burger.
And
Yeah.
I was promised, okay. See, he's making himself, being disappointing. So if he say your company say, I was told, okay, this is the person who's speaking at you. He's not speaking with you. Whereas if he said, I was under the impression when we call, okay, he's saying he was under the impression, which could be wrong.
Mm.
Mhm.
Okay.
I could be
I
wrong, but I was under the
correct
impression
that the
that,
car will be ready
yeah,
at this point in time. It was
Mhm.
my
forgive
exact.
me,
Forgive me.
forgive me,
Correct.
but
This is someone who's speaking
yes,
with you. But if he's
Mhm.
saying to you, I was told your company, the lady I spoke to told me on the phone. I called and okay, that's
or you were supposed
you
So
were
to,
I
you
supposed to.
should
so the
have.
first example, I what I teach, and I teach my team that that's a critical parent, right?
Hmm.
Or they're coming
Mm,
at us, like
Correct. It's
you should have,
speaking
and it's like think of
yeah,
your
don't go out in the street. You're
so
gonna get hit by a
so when you
car.
have
Type.
that customer who's coming after my agent and they're pointing their finger, so to speak, symbolically, you told me, you promised me, your company, this, that, and the other thing. I mean, what does that do to the agent who they see that person as how their parents spoke to them, because those tapes replay in your head, especially those triggers, right? So that customer's going after them, and then
hmm
what does that agent do? Sometimes they go into like a child mode and they're acting out of an
Mm,
emotional state. Whereas in
correct.
your
that's a
second
very good point.
example, those customers are great because they're coming at you in an adult state of mind, which is how I describe it.
Mm,
And you can
Hmm.
have a more adult conversation. It's a quicker, better conversation in most cases because you can come to a conclusion, right? Or at least have an
Absolutely.
understanding of what they need and try
yeah.
and figure it out. That emotional, highly critical parent conversation to get that person down to an adult state of mind, that's where we try and, I have to work with my team so they don't go into child mode.
So that they remain the adult in the room,
Exactly.
even if it's
We
full
need
of
balance.
children.
We need
Gotcha.
everybody in the adult
Exactly.
state.
In our last conversation, Ryan and I, and we cover what now we just refer to as the 7 rule for optimal mental well-being. One of those rules is focus understanding. You said listening to understand, same concept. When you have a focus understanding, you focus on what the person is telling you. You focus on their emotion. You focus that they're very upset. Okay, you have a focused understanding of the whole scenario the person is presenting to you, and then your left brain is formulated what would be the best approach. The best approach would be, I need to listen. I'm listening so I can understand, or I have a focused understanding. It's very important when someone is speaking to you or speaking to us to give the person the impression that we are focused on what they are saying. We focus on the need they're presenting to us. We focus on the fact that they're conveying to us that they were dissatisfied. And as you mentioned, what can I do to change that? And it all goes back to, did I understand what the person explained to me?
Mhm. But going
Mm,
back to what we were talking about with training, so you
Hmm.
understand the nervous system, you understand if they're speaking with you or at you, right?
Yes.
And then what other things can we do to train ourselves to stay in that adult stage? So to be calm, to give them the attention. Is it the awareness? Is it
Well,
breathing?
both breathing and awareness will be something I do before I go to the conversation. Both my awareness of the situation as well as my breathing apparatus, those are already given to me. I go in that meeting or in that conversation already have those with me. What I do in over the years is very important. Number one, we need to learn. It's extremely critical that we do not take what someone says to us, particularly in a professional interaction and in those situations where the relationship is a transactory relationship, it's a transaction. Okay, so no matter what, how angry, irritated, upset, dissatisfied the customer is, I will not take what the customer says personally. So I that's where you keep your emotional in check. That's very important. Most of the time, people react because they take what the person said personally, and now they're reacting from an emotional point of view. So that's something you need to work on, and that's something you need to do away from work.
you need to practice that in
Correct.
your
You
day
need
to
to
day at
Practice
the
it.
correct
grocery
at the
store,
grocery store. Exactly.
at the neighbor's house,
Correct.
in your own
Correct.
living room with your own
Correct.
family.
Correct. For
Hmm. Hmm.
example,
That's really good, solid advice for both of you guys, by the way.
Hmm.
correct.
It's
When
beautiful.
I go to the grocery store or any other store and I'm standing on the line and there's a person there who have a problem and the person who's tending to us have to tend to that customer who's in front of us. In front of me, there's three other people. I immediately look at everyone in front of me. They're making facial like let's go. You know what I do? I just reach for a magazine.
I'll need to look at that. Yeah.
I'm reading a magazine. And then I can't tell you how many times in my life I'm reading a magazine. Somebody says, sir, you next. Oh, okay, sorry. But I'm not going to stand there making faces, breathing heavy, like get out of the line, whoever you are. And those are how you're training yourself to pay attention. That person need may be legitimate, and she's in front of me. And the person who's tending to us is tending to them, just like they're going to be tending to me. And so I give that time and that space to allow the person needs to meet. I do that on my own. If I go at the gym, Ryan and I will go to the gym. When someone is using the machine, we say, okay, how many sets you get left? 3 more sets. Take your time. Don't worry. I'll do something else. I'll go to some other machine, okay? When I'm driving, okay, there was a time when I'm driving, if there's a slow driver in front of me, when I have the opportunity to pass you, I pass you. I give you that look. Like, get off the road.
Like I'm growling, why are you in my way again?
I train myself from now on, pass the person, do not look. Just keep looking at where you're going. You have no idea what the person is going through. You don't know what's going on in their lives. Go ahead, Colleen.
Exactly. You do not know what's going on in their lives.
Correct.
They may not even.
However,
stop. Listen to understand.
When we are talking about driving, and I know for a fact that you are texting or distracted, you deserve the look that you will get, that I will permeate through your soul, and I will burn a hole through your driver's side door with my eyeballs to explode your heart. Metaphorically.
And does that make you feel better? Do you feel better after you do that?
Yes. I had my own company, and prior to that, I drove large trucks professionally. And I've seen people with 3 kids in the back seat of their car driving down the road like this, texting, and not driving very well either. And I'm making like evasive movements so I don't kill them and their entire family. It's like the peak of irresponsibility for anyone to be in their vehicle haphazardly texting or clunkily texting. Hey, if you're driving and on my way, I'll be right there. Okay. But if you're writing a novel and you're reading a novel and you're in like an emotional text, or you're just being a jerk. I've literally seen people scrolling on news feeds of Facebook and Instagram while driving on the highway. Like, dude, are you that bored? You are going 80 miles an hour in a little metal box with an exploding combustion engine in front of you and a tank of explosive fuel behind you. Like, it is the most, in the history of humankind, it automatically, so if you're like baseline is just, you're an Eddie, you're like, you run around at a 3. As soon as Eddie gets in his car, he's already a 5. It's the human nature. You have to, because of how fast your body's going. And they've done studies on road rage, especially in men, that I don't want to say especially in men. I focused on the part about men because I was trying to figure out my own damn road rage. But with men, it's a hyper protective and hyper security thing of themselves and family. When you are driving recklessly, it's why men have road rage. It's like the primal instinct. Yes, I agree, Colleen. I know where you're going with this. I already wrote it down. a podcast on road rage. That would be fun. But I also
want to add some commentary to what you're saying, because we might as well do a public.
Please.
So when I was recovering from COVID, I was out with COVID. I was out for 4 months. Okay, I was very sick. Wow. I had a fever for 28 days. Wow. Right. So when I was, on the mend, at least is what I thought I was on the mend. I probably should have been sleeping for another 4 weeks. I had to drive to the doctor's office, right? And I'm like, come on, I have to just get in the car and go. I'm fine, right? I would drive from Pottsville to Pine. What is that? 15 miles.
30
Yeah.
minutes. Yeah.
By the
Yeah,
time
15
I
miles,
got
about
to
30
the
minutes in the
doctor's
country.
appointment, I was ready. I could have gone to sleep for 8 hours. I'm just driving. Like I'm not doing anything. And then someone said to me, Colleen, do you realize how many muscles and brain functions and everything you use to drive? And people don't realize that. So when you're saying you're texting and driving, you even before texting, how much brain capacity you're using in your muscles and everything. And then you're going to add texting onto that. It's crazy. It's absolutely ridiculous, crazy. I don't, I wish I could say.
From a psychological point of view, we do know that you can look at those studies. If you drive, you get your driver's license and you're driving steadily, you have a car and then you drive. After a couple of years or so, after a couple of years or 2.5 years to 3 years, you're no longer driving. Your unconscious mind is driving.
Yeah, I mean yeah,
Because you can say,
definitely.
for example,
How many
I'm sorry, Ryan.
go ahead. How many times have you been driving a long distance that you drive all the
oh my
time?
God, how did I get?
And you get on the exit and you're like, what?
Yeah,
I don't remember what lane I was in.
that's
I
it.
don't remember what
You
speed I
don't,
was going.
because your
Yeah.
unconscious mind is driving. Although, especially when you've been driving for a long time. So therefore, the part of you is texting. It's a different part. It's not only interfere. You can, for example, we do that all the time. I can be in the car. Okay, I'm talking to my wife. I'm still driving. Okay, I'm telling my daughter,
Yep.
hey, baby, mom and I is talking. I'm still driving. See, it's my unconscious mind who's driving because I would have to
Yeah.
stop to talk to my daughter. I don't even look at her. I can just quickly glimpse at the review and say, baby, mom
Yep.
and I is talking. Okay, sweetheart. And it's
Mhm.
okay, all
And
right. And I do that while I'm still driving. I can put my signal on and say that to her. So there's a lot of
from an
psychology.
engineering,
Correct,
yeah,
correct.
from an engineering perspective, though, the vehicles are made that way. They are literally made that you can look right up and I can see my kids in the back seat. I can look over here and I can see my lane. My hands are right here and I go click. That's my clicker. Click.
And
That's my wiper.
I'm eating
Bam.
my
There's my
gummy.
radio. Eat my gummies.
Help me out, people. I'm trying to discourage people from texting and driving, and you're
Well,
basically saying that.
No,
Well,
we're saying that it's something that you should definitely be aware of because you are traveling so fast that you don't even realize how fast you're traveling. There's a thing called highway hypnosis. It happens to truck drivers a lot, especially at night. Empty highway. I'm driving. I'm on I-80, and it's white line, all yellow line over here. White line, white line, white line, white line. Nothing. I can only see the illumination in front of me that I'm illuminating with my headlights. The rest of the world is almost a black backdrop.
It's kind of like when you're going into a
white line, white line.
a snow
let it
and
start
a snow
to-
squall.
Yeah, I was just about ready to say, let it just start to sleet a little bit. Now it's white line and white line, dark. Next thing you know it, you're, holy crap. I've been driving for 3 hours. I better stop and get fuel. And you literally feel like you took 3 breaths.
well,
Like
another thing, these are for people who, again, if we may go back to training the mind, training the central nervous system, training the neurological aspect. It takes time, and as you mentioned earlier, it takes time to learn to the deep breathing, what we call the breath work.
Yep.
Ryan and I talk about that, and then also dealing with in meditation, we deal with learning my emotion. But you get into an accident because several things happen. One, for a brief moment, like for an infinite moment, we ignore the concept of biological reflex. For example, biological reflex, you have a white line on the ground. The white line cannot keep you safe. It's a paint
no.
that is on the ground.
It's paint on concrete.
That's
It does
right.
nothing. It is not a force field.
Correct.
I
So
agree.
the yellow line.
Eddie made it funny.
You gotta watch the podcast, Colleen. Eddie's borderline comedian. Borderline. I'm not gonna give him all the credit for it. So, for the sake of the pace of the conversation, I would like you two to discuss the value. I would like Colleen to start and then Eddie to chime in. The value and the way to pace a conversation, like you had mentioned earlier. Yeah, so I went down to the hardware store and I see my buddy Bill, and Bill was talking to me. And when I got up to the counter, I talked to Jeff, and then I remembered that I have to pick my daughter up in Virginia. Could I get this rental car for another day?
You said the value,
How do you,
and
Of the pace.
the value of pace
or
of
the value
conversation?
of pace.
Well,
Yeah, the value. I'm going to let you guys have that conversation and be back in like 2 minutes.
okay. So one of the things, pace of the conversation, I think the first thing that comes to mind is mirroring and matching. So I want to try, out of respect for the person I'm speaking to, if we're having an adult conversation, I think it's very important to keep the pace of that individual. If they're speaking fast, they're in a hurry, I want to try and mirror it to the best of my ability, but still be able to get my point across. So I may need to scale back a little bit. If their speech is very slow and methodical, I want to mirror that and slower my communication and speak very clearly, have complete sentences with pauses in between to respect that individual, right? Give them time to take in everything I'm saying and maybe pause to ask questions. So that when he's talking about pace of conversation, that's one of the things I try to do is mirror the person I'm talking to.
Well, again, from a psychological point of view, I would have to say it's all depends, because all conversation is not made equal. Okay, different conversation will need different pace. But what I often tell my client is conversation, it's another term we use for communication. And a conversation with everyone or anyone you have a conversation with, it is extremely important for us to know what we do and we are communicating with the other person or whoever number of people that are there. And that the art of communication involves much more than the verbal words we use in communication.
For sure.
Communication include behavior, attitude, tendency, posture. If I'm talking to you, the way you sit,
Posture or pasture?
posture, yeah,
Posture.
the way, yeah,
Posture.
exactly.
Okay.
You know, the
Okay.
way you sit, the way you're behaving, your legs,
Okay.
and I'm looking your eye movement, your lips, all those things are communicating to me. Okay,
Or they're conveying.
conveying to me. So
Yeah.
that's what I mean. The pace of I can talking to you. I can see the way you sit down. This is not gonna go well. I can talking to you. I'm explaining something to you. The way you're looking at me, I can say this is not gonna go well. Because as soon as you can
Yeah.
take the conversation, it's not gonna go well. So communication involves my behavior, my attitude, my tendency, my expression. There you go. My breathing. Okay, do I look like I'm really not there? I'm sitting there, but I'm really not interested in what you say. I can pick all that up just by your behavior, your attitude, and your tendency. All that play into the pace of the conversation. What we want is to have a conversation with someone, and the person will say, "Well, thank you. I appreciate the way you handled that." Then the person's not
Or
talking
I
about your
value
word.
the.
They're talking about your tendency, the way you sit, the way you look at them, your eye movement, your lip movement, the way you address them. So, in a pace of a conversation, you need all that tools, all that resources to convey to that person that the values, the thoughts are important to you. What they have to say is very important, and you convey that to them in all those things I just mentioned: the way you sit, the way you express yourself, your eye movement, your lip movement, and definitely the word
Well,
you
when
use.
you asked me that question, though, Ryan, I was thinking all of my customers are over the phone, so I don't have that
Okay,
opportunity to
all
be in
right,
front. And
yeah.
he's absolutely 100% correct.
Oh yeah.
But
Well, let's get it from your perspective,
that's
because a lot of people do talk over the phone or over text,
well,
or
that's what I said when you
in a digital
yeah,
manner.
when you walked away. That's exactly what I said. And if it's a difficult conversation, I already told you that if they're getting irate, I slower my speech. and the pace.
Ask them if, hey, could you give me a minute so I can go grab a pen? Yeah,
But
that's a good
typically
trick.
over the phone, we'll mirror and match their conversation, which basically means if I have somebody who's speaking very slowly and methodical, then in turn we would do the same thing, right? Or vice versa. I mean, I remember a time where I had a one of my agents was from the Northeast, right? And most of her, I had her working in an area where it was mostly people from the South. And there was a lot of irate customers because they thought she was very, very rude. When in doubt, she was one of the nicest people you could ever meet. But over the phone, she sounded very aggressive to someone who's
people in
not
the
used to that.
Northeast, people in the Northeast tend to talk a little faster and more pungent and poignant
And she just wants to.
folks in the South. How y'all doing?
What are you doing?
Yeah.
I got to get this done. I'll get it done, and she will. She will make sure. She would have made sure that you got everything you needed very quickly.
But you had to give her what she needed to make that happen very quickly.
But the
right?
customers thought she was coming off very rude. So
because she wasn't saying things like "bless your heart"
and she, so she wasn't slowing the conversation down. And once I made some changes and moved her to an area that she was, in the Northeast and working with those customers, and put somebody else to work with customers in the southern states, we had less problems because those two individuals, the pace of their conversation were much different, but they fit the demographics.
So we can all agree, pace, posture, and tone are the three most important things to have a successful conversation in almost any setting.
They're important, but the words are visual. But they're using positive words.
Words are visual as well.
Yep. So using the right
content we'll say
is important as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So content, posture, octave, we can even throw in there as well. You don't want to get too loud, and pace is very important too. To be a successful conveyor of points, opinions, debate. And then the art of listening is a whole nother other thing. We'll maybe get to that another time. This next question is for Eddie, and if you'd like to, Colleen, please do chime in. This is one that I don't know if Eddie's going to satisfy it or not. Is speech and or conversation, visual posture, such, is that part of natural law, or is that the void of natural law?
Speech,
because we're not born speaking, and we don't necessarily need speech to. I've been in countries and in places where I don't speak the language, but I could still eat something to eat. Oh, over here. Oh, thank you. This way. Yes. Okay. Thank you. So that's communication. That's not speech. That's what I mean by the difference of the two. But is that part of natural law, or else is that the void of natural law?
The building paradigm is natural law.
Please put that into layman terms. I need that Ryan down about 3 octaves, Eddie.
I'm right there.
If you could, please.
With you, Ryan.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Don't encourage him, Colleen.
I tell people all the time it's hard being stupid. That's why I try and read, man.
I think our listener will get a wonderful time with this podcast. Yes. No, what we mean by we say the paradigm, the paradigm is natural law. In other words, every living organism have a method of communication. So therefore, the paradigm is natural law. When a child is born, the child already have an internal biological paradigm prepared to formulate words. And so the words are not natural law, but the paradigm, the ability to speak, it's a biological and natural law building with every living organism.
The ability to communicate, not necessarily speak.
Correct. You
Yeah.
can find a child who born we didn't know they're not going to be able to speak, but they communicate to us, and we find that later on the vocal cord is not working. They're going to be learning different means of communicating, but they still have the internal paradigm building block to for speech. It's just a different form of speech. So the
Hmm.
internal paradigm is natural law, and it's in every living organism. Every living organism have a building paradigm system for speech, except different way of communicating.
Huh. So we would say speech is not part of natural law, but communication is. Is
Yes,
that correct?
yes,
Okay.
yes. Because every,
And what does the word paradigm mean exactly?
a
Can you
mechanical a
define that for
system,
us? Oh,
a
okay.
sys-
So the system of natural
correct,
law has communication built
and
in
not your
for every
building.
species.
Correct,
Yeah, I mean that makes
correct,
sense if you can tell if something's scared, even if it's a different species from
correct,
you, not even
correct, correct,
a different nationality
correct,
or
correct. If you look,
language. If something's angry, yeah,
they'll
you know.
communicate that very well, and they understand each other. Okay,
Hmm.
and so you can see every living organism have a form of communication. Now let me take it a step further, not in terms of creative, simply in terms of elaborate. Uh, the plants have a form of communication.
Oh,
You
of
can have
course.
a fungi in one plant. They have a way to communicate to the other plant. There's a fungi, and they start building a chemical reaction to prevent the fungi from spread to.
Eddie, you're a fun guy. Let me tell you what.
Thank you.
Do you have anything to add to that, Colleen?
I was just curious if you had a follow-up question. Why were you so, why that question?
I'm trying to learn the law of
Yeah,
nature
Oh,
natural
and
law.
what natural
Yeah.
law is. So this is an ongoing thing for me.
oh,
The whole point of this conversation for the curious mind is to feed my curious mind. I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound selfish, but
No.
I'm the I'm the curiosity and you guys are kind of the experts, I would say.
hmm
But at the same time, I've had enough experience in my life to ask informed questions and still contribute also to
hmm
my own questions,
right.
I guess, or the conversation itself.
I
And
just
then
feel. Go
go
ahead.
ahead, Colleen.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No,
Rock,
I'm
paper,
not going to
scissors.
say anything.
Okay, Colleen first. Ladies first, please.
All I was going to say was, we talked at the beginning of this podcast and we said, is there a psychology behind communication, right? Is there a
Yes.
psychology, right? So that's how we kind of started. But I think what I definitely believe is there's an art of communication. There's art behind it, right? We can learn to communicate different ways to achieve a different reaction. We can we could improve our communication to have a more positive outcome. So while maybe we can agree with Eddie that there's not the psychology behind it, can we agree that there's an art behind communication?
Oh my God, yes.
Well, what I would say though, if we can use different means of communicating and to achieve as you said, a positive result or a different result, the key there will be so long as I know what is it I need to achieve. And if we go back for some of the point we made in a conversation with a dissatisfied, agitated, irritated customer, the idea is how can I let this customer leave this promise satisfied, feel respected, feel appreciated, and come back and do business with us. That will be an end result. And whatever means I need to use to employ to achieve that will be the goal. So long as I know what's the goal, and that case would be to move the dissatisfied customer into a satisfied customer, as well as let them live. They feel they were respected. We were professional in our interaction with them. They will listen to, and they're not gonna leave there and say, "Did you see how she looked at me? Did you see how he talked to me? Yeah, he helped me, but no, they want to leave. Say, I appreciate that the person was listening." So if always know, there is a great philosopher His name is Niccolo Machiavelli.
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 Nicholas
Well,
Machiavelli
there's
for
no O at the end. There's
Nikolai.
For the
Nikolai
Americans
Machiavelli.
right here.
My bad.
yeah, Niccolo Machiavelli.
Machiavelli.
He
Yes.
says this guy he's one of very unique type of philosophy. He says that the end always justify the mean, no matter how cruel the ends is. That's a
Uh-huh.
very
Mm.
powerful thing. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Now we go around repeating the end justify the mean. We don't know what that means. This guy was, I mean, he troubled the Renaissance. He turned the Renaissance upside down because he had
Say that for me again, Eddie. The Machiavelli
The end
quote.
justifies
the
the means.
ends always justify the means, no matter how cruel the means the ends is.
The end
Always
always justifies the
no
means,
matter how
no
cruel
matter how
the
cruel
means,
the end
the
is.
means,
Or the
the
means.
means.
Ooh,
And
no
you know
matter
where he
how
get
cruel
that
the
from?
means.
He get that from when the barbarian surrendered and invade Rome. The Roman,
Which barbarians are we talking about? The
yeah,
Germanics?
the Germanic, the
Okay.
Huguenots, and they surrender Rome,
The
the
Slavs.
Slav. Okay, the Roman government make the assumption those guys gonna run out of food very soon. They're gonna run out of water very soon, and they're gonna surrender to us. So we're gonna just wait it out and let them run out of water. They're gonna walk away or surrender to us. You see what they did? Those people come very prepared. So months and weeks surrendering Rome. You know what they will do? They will take a half a dozen of soldiers, Roman soldiers they already kidnapped, chop them into pieces, and put them in a horse and send them across the field. And the woman said, "Wait a minute, I thought they all dead." Okay, they will wait for another 2 3 weeks. They'll take a group of soldiers because they already kidnapped a bunch of soldiers and they chop them into
Hmm.
pieces, put them in horses, and send them. That's when Rome said, "We're in trouble. We are really in trouble." And Machiavelli later on said, "Listen, the ends always justify the means, no matter how cruel is the mean." So we don't want to do that in a conversation. That's what it says. It's very important for you to know what's the end. What is it I have to accomplish, and what method I'm going to employ to accomplish it. Always have an idea what is it you want to accomplish.
Uh-huh.
One of my favorite psychological warfare techniques. Again, I'm an amateur at everything, but I've spent a lot of time studying war tactics, the reason a war happens, and how to win over the people after you conquer, and how to convey and convince your people, hey, we have to now ration our food because I just amassed this huge army that has to traverse this 1,000-mile land on your horses with your wheat. Oh, we need to send more of your horses and more of your wheat to replenish them at the end of spring or at the end of summer before winter hits. But the Germanics, as Eddie would say, they would send them up on horses. They would also take men that were alive,
Mm-hmm.
tie rocks to their legs and rocks to their arms, and stick them in what's called a trebuchet. It's the first version of the catapult, sorry. And they would set them on fire and launch them over the wall. You want to talk about saying, guys, I think we may have said an oopsie here. When you see Willie screaming through the air and splatting on your house, he's on fire. The rocks knock down your walls and now your roof is on fire. And this guy might still be alive screaming.
The end.
That's a high level of psychological warfare. That will conquer a nation quickly.
The end justifies
And I
the
have
means.
a lot of admiration for the barbarians, but the Germanics of that time frame, because they were literally facing the largest fighting force the world has ever seen.
Mhm.
I don't want to get too far into this, but it's just another really cool thing that I thought. They would have their women and children on the wood line, banging on shields and banging on. They never go out into the battlefield and yelling and screaming.
Psychological warfare.
Yeah, if you're fighting them, you think that there's 10,000 more
Yep.
of these barbarians coming out of the woods.
Yep.
They're using
Yep.
noise.
There you go.
They're being
That's
noisy.
right.
There's a theme here that you guys don't quite know about who's listening, but
That's right.
you guys will know
You're
soon.
making
The
noise.
knows. If you know,
Using
I
The
know.
noise.
noise
too.
makers.
They're noisemakers. You know, I have to say one thing, and we can maybe talk about this a different time, but I can't help when Eddie was talking about you know, train the nervous, shut down the, or slow down the nervous system, right?
Hmm.
And understand what the person's saying, and training and all that kind of stuff. And I keep thinking to myself, I was thinking of bullies, and I was thinking of those who are getting bullied. And,
Hmm.
is there something to be taught to these kids who are in these situations, and they're hearing, they're getting bullied, and how they can learn to cope with it from a mental, psychological standpoint. A little, is there any tools to be given to them today that we could help them with those types of issues?
How to fight back. So I had a bully when I was a kid, and I went to my grandfather and asked him to teach me how to fight. And my grandfather was a Marine, and he laughed at me and he said, "Son, next time someone says something that's insulting to you,
Hmm.
look at them and ask them, are you okay?"
Well, right, right. But what is triggering?
But
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
it took a lot of bravery on my part to say
Yes.
that. It took me years to actually implement that, because I was terrified
Yeah.
that if I look at this guy who's picking on me and I say, "Hey, bud, are you okay?" He gonna beat the snot out of me, and you know what I mean? Now the bullying's just gonna get worse. I'm gonna be the okay guy. But then you implement it. Actually, I'm sad to say, it happened to me when I was being irate with customer. I was the irate
Uh-huh.
customer. And this old gentleman said, "Sir, are you okay right now?" And this whole thing just flooded back to me of me being 8, asking my grandfather to teach me how to
Uh-huh.
box or fight. And him telling me, just ask your bully if he's okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the
I
value,
mean,
because I paused right there and I'm like, "No, man, I'm not. And I'm really sorry. Like, this is not who I am. And no, I'm not okay. But I really appreciate you asking.
but
So can we just start over, please?" And my whole tone changed just because this guy asked me if I was okay. And he actually meant it. Like, he said it in a manner that I felt like he
well, that's the caring
was
part.
really worried
You
about
got
me.
to care, right? You got to have that empathy towards. You don't know
Yeah.
what's going on in their minds. You don't have any clue. But I was going to say, now I lost my train of thought. So my question also is, like, as an adult, obviously our brains are more mature, and I understand what Eddie's saying, and I can, probably activate or train in the way he's talking. But kids, can they do that? Can it be taught? Can they? Go ahead.
I will let Eddie take this
Yeah.
one because I have no clue.
Yeah, this is a very tough one.
I know.
Yes, we can empower kids to deal with being bullied. However, the empowerment have to come in a very unique way in terms of emotional and psychological approach. What we don't want to do, which I did a lot of research and did a lot of lecturing that when I worked for the Lebanon School District, and I talk on that very frequently at the college there, Lebanon Valley College. What we don't want to do is to um, equip or either empower children to deal with bully. We don't want to do that. You don't want to. You don't want to do.
We want to defuse, not deal.
Exactly. And
Okay.
so
Okay.
what we want to equip children to do, which I do a lot of work when I work for Feel Heaven, which was a psychiatric ward. I work in the adolescent unit there. One of the issue we used to deal with a lot, kids who've been bullied, the first thing that they will do is withdraw emotionally. They don't tell. They're afraid of telling.
Mm-hmm.
What we need to do is equip them and
Do you know why they
them.
are, Eddie?
Say that again.
Do you know why they are afraid to
They're
tell?
afraid to tell because of poor self-esteem.
No, snitches get stitches.
That,
They lie in ditches. I'm joking, guys.
Oh.
Just a joke. Sorry. I had to say that.
yeah,
It's an yeah. My friends will get it.
yeah, hopefully.
You're welcome, veterans. I got you guys.
Yeah.
Well represented here, brothers.
Both boys and girls, when they get bullied, whether it's at school, even whether it's at work, whether it's at the playground, wherever the
Adults get bullied as well.
for adult we call it harass or emotionally.
Okay.
Yeah, will
Yeah,
be
yeah.
harassed.
We
The concept
redefine
bully, it remain in the domain of adolescent. They can go into teenage years. there was a withdrawal, there was a shutdown emotionally, and it affect the person's self-esteem because they're afraid of saying, I couldn't defend myself. And so
Mhm.
we need to empower them to speak up, to say, Mom, this is what happened. Dad, there's a kids in my school who's bullying me. See, the kids wants to be well by their dad, and they're afraid dad gonna say, if a kid push you, you should punch him too. He's afraid he's gonna get a different, so he withdraw, he shut down. What we need to do is teaching them, empower them to, if you bully the school, speak up, tell your mom, tell your dad, tell teacher, tell a friend, tell someone. That's what we need to do.
I think that's one of the like I hate to be I don't like to be cynical about things even if I don't like them. I always try to find like value in it. And this woke ideology, that's one thing that I see that's a huge benefit is kids do feel more comfortable speaking up and even policing their own. Like bullying's not cool. And if you're a bully, you're going to get like people aren't going to want to hang out with you. You're going to be ostracized and isolated because you're a bully. And people are a lot kinder in their day to day in schools because of that. I think because we've allowed it to. Like there was a time when I was in school where I knew of someone that was getting picked on, and they went to the teacher, and the teacher was like, "Well, you're going to have to figure out how to handle that."
And I hope we don't do that anymore.
No, they definitely don't. And, you know, yeah, but I get where the teacher was coming from too. Like you have to learn how to handle that. You do. But I don't think that the school is the place that you should have to learn how to handle that. The school should be a place where you learn, and it should be a safe, equal opportunity, not equal outcome. I refuse to think that anyone should all have the same outcome. Outcome is directly correlated to effort and consistency and passion and persistence and planning and preparation. That results in outcome. So I do not, but we should all have an equal opportunity to pursue the best outcome that we can possibly obtain. And if you're bullying me in school, if you're picking on me on the bus, well, you're taking me completely out of the thought process of, I got math class after recess. No, I'm thinking, I got recess next. This guy's going to bully me again. Or my bully's in my math class and I'm not even thinking about math.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just hoping this guy ain't, kicking the back of my chair and spitting spitballs in my hair again.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes.
Let's stop there though,
Mm-hmm.
because it's getting to that witching hour. Colleen has a clock behind her. Colleen, don't ever do that again. But your clock it's not the right time, which is cool because now we don't look like we're nighttime crazies. We've done these into the wee hours of the morning, and yeah, we don't need to be exposed, Colleen. What are you trying to do? But then
I just exposed myself that I didn't replace the battery in my clock, so we all know that.
Oh, no, I think maybe the times I don't think that you set it for the spring ahead.
Oh, is that what it is?
If I had to guess.
That's what it is.
Spring ahead. But as a reminder, everyone, it is spring. Enjoy some sunshine. Vitamin D is very important to the well-being of our everything. It's one of the largest hormones that our body uses to help fight off infections, inflammation. It's correlated to depression, and you can only get it through naturally, without supplements.
Sun.
Who got it? The sunlight. So go get out in the sun, you freaking day walkers. Go get out there and enjoy the sun. Are you night walkers? Go get out there and enjoy the sun. And for Christ's sakes, we just changed the clocks. Change out the batteries in your smoke alarms and monoxide detectors. Don't be the clown that the downstairs is on fire and you never had a smoke detector. That's all I got, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, for
go ahead.
Go ahead, Colleen. Last word.
No, I just want. This was great. Thank you so much. We did a great job. You just shot me.
Not yet. Oh, I'll get you next time. I gotta get the darts off the
wall. You hit my clock.
We want to tell our viewers that communication, it's an art. Listening, it's an art. And there's much more involved when we communicate. Learn to communicate properly. And if you having trouble communicating, don't feel bad because none of us born and know how to communicate. It's a learning process. Listening, it's a learning process. As we just mentioned, it's an art, but we all are artists. So be on the path of become a artist in your listening, and you will do good.
Very good.
That was excellent,
beautiful.
Eddie. I can't add or sum that up any better. I'm going to just say this. Thank you again for listening to another episode of Communication. Let me rewind. Thank you again for Thank you again for listening to another episode of Conversation for the Curious Mind. I'm going to go to bed now. Conversation for the Curious Mind is brought to you by In Search Innovation. Thank you again, Colleen, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And as always, Eddie, much love and much appreciation to you, my friend.
Thank you, my friend. Colleen, is very glad to see you.
Glad to see you as well. Thank you for having me.
I'm looking forward to doing this again. And check in our comments. I'm going to post up all of Colleen's socials. She's in the ethos as well. And, we'd like to go check her out. She's definitely an interesting corner over in Colleen's area. We'll just say that.
We like her around.
Thank you guys again. Have a great night. And until next time, may the conversation continue.
Thank you.